This is the series that I am most fired up about. Clippers have been absolutely unbelievable on both ends of the floor, especially defensively, ever since Kawhi has really turned back into Kawhi. The Nuggets, they get the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic. I know they have some other issues. They just fire their head coach. They get defensive problems, but they still have Jokic. This series is going to be awesome. What's the number one thing you're watching for in it?
Man, there's so much, because I have like 4 different things listed here for this Nuggets Clippers series. And to your point, I think this is like probably the best series of the first round, just because of how competitive and back and forth it could be. There's obviously the injury questions for the Clippers in terms of, can Kawhi Leonard stay healthy? Can James Harden stay healthy throughout the series? Can those guys be effective through all 7 games? Because I do think this will eventually go 7 games, a little, kind of leak to my prediction there. The number one question I have is Jamal Murray, because Murray against the Wolves in the second round last year, 18.4 points per game, shot 40% from the field, 33% from 3, 2.7 turnovers per game, which would have been a career high. The Clippers have tons of bodies that they can throw at Murray. They have Derek Jones Jr., they have Chris Dunn, they have Kawhi Leonard, they have Nick Batum potentially, who's going to be coming back for this series. They just have tons of length and physicality to throw out at Jamal Murray. And I think Murray is such a huge part of what the Nuggets do offensively. That 2-man game that him and Jokic run is still one of the most unstoppable in the NBA. If the Clippers can effectively limit one aspect of that, which is the Jamal Murray aspect, it really changes the equation for the Nuggets. And like Chris Dunn, I don't know how you feel, but man, I wish he was eligible for all defense, because he was just incredible this year. 95th percentile guarding pick and rolls, 87th percentile as an isolation defender. How much the Clippers are allowed to keep him on the floor just because of the lack of 3-point shooting threat from him, that's also one aspect that I'm kind of curious about. But generally, Jamal Murray versus the point of attack defense of the Clippers is question number 1 for me for this series.
Yeah, his effectiveness against their point of attack defense. I'm with you on Chris Dunn, by the way. With Jamal Murray, and not only that, he's just not healthy. Like Malone, before he got fired, had said it was questionable that he'd be able to return for the postseason, and he ended up playing 2 games, and he was not good in those games. He shot 25% from 3, 45% from 2-point range. He just did not look like himself, as we saw prior to that injury, when he got off to a bad start this season. And then middle of the year, February, March, started to look more like Jamal Murray. He looked pretty bad those last 2 games. Is that going to be more of what we're going to see, especially against a tough Clippers defense on the perimeter? Or is he going to be able to turn into the high-scoring Jamal Murray we've seen in some past postseasons, or even last year against the Lakers? He had some not-so-great games, but then he hit some big shots down the stretch.
Game clutch.
Yes, in those games. So, that's even in the closing game of that series, I think he had 30 shots almost in the final game.
Yeah.
The Nuggets beat the Lakers last year, and I don't remember it being the most efficient scoring game, but he showed the high volume scoring ability. So that's going to be big time for Denver. Also, I think kind of similar to what you said, with the amount of bodies the Clippers have to throw at Jamal Murray, the Nuggets do have some size at the wing. They got Aaron Gordon. Michael Porter's big. He's got these 6'10". He's not a great defender by any means, but
he's big.
He's big.
Yeah.
How are they going to do against Kawhi Leonard, who has just been absolutely sensational? The way Kawhi's moving right now, he looks like peak Kawhi at the moment. Defensively, the way he's roaming around and rotating. Offensively, the way he's getting into his shots, getting to the basket. Kawhi Leonard looks like a top 5 player at this particular moment. And for the Nuggets, do they have enough bodies to contain him? And even if you do somehow, some way, well, they got James Harden. They got Norm Powell. They got Zubats, who's really freaking good. I had him on my 3rd-team All-NBA. I just feel like the Clippers got more guys that can be trusted behind their best player, Kawhi Leonard, than the Nuggets do behind their best player, Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, I agree with you that the Clippers have those guys. The Nuggets, wasn't it a thing that they got Aaron Gordon to guard Kawhi? Like that was the primary aspect. They eventually traded for him in the first place. So now they're finally getting to see if that comes to fruition. Like Gordon is a really, really important part of this piece. Offensively, obviously the 2-man game between him and Jokic, but defensively being the primary defender on Kawhi Leonard, I think he has the size, he has the strength, he has the foot speed to be able to keep along with Kawhi. The way that Kawhi is able to just not waste any steps offensively, that's something that obviously from covering the Raptors and watching him in 2019, he's just such a surgical offensive player, and that hasn't changed. He just knows his spots. He's effective. And I think he's like in a playoff series, fully healthy. I don't think you can take 5 players over him in the NBA. Like he's one of the most effective playoff players that we have currently in the NBA. The other thing is that on the other side, the Nuggets have Nikola Jokic, who is equally in that regard, an incredible playoff player. And I guess the question I have is kind of the push and pull between Jokic manipulating the Clippers defense and how great the Clippers defense is at recovering out and getting, kind of stopping these advantages that Jokic is able to create out of thin air. You think of the 3-point rate for the Nuggets and them not being the greatest 3-point shooting team, tons of pressure on Michael Porter Jr., tons of pressure on Jamal Murray to knock down those shots. Christian Brown is another guy who I think is important in this series. Can the Nuggets get out in transition? That's going to come down to how well the Nuggets defend. And Kevin, I guess I'll ask you this. This is something that I'm worried about, or I guess concerned about. Jokic isn't having the greatest defensive season. And how much pressure will the Clippers put on Jokic to work on the defensive end? Because Zubac has been great in post-ups. I think he'll be able to put some pressure on Jokic. And generally, getting Jokic involved in pick and rolls. How high will Jokic be on the level of the screen pick and roll wise? Will it be a situation where he has to step up higher because it's Kawhi Leonard or James Harden who can knock down those threes? Or will he play a deeper drop and hope that, his point of attack defenders can kind of go over those screens and fight through? That's sort of the push and pull between how great Jokic is offensively and how he can manipulate the Clippers defense versus how much pressure can the Clippers offense put on Jokic on the defensive end.
I think that's spot on, and we're going to see that probably right out of the gates in game 1. Like they're going to be attacking Jokic over and over, trying to wear him down. And offensively, Jokic needs to carry more of a load than he ever has. I mean, he had an all-time great offensive season. He was like, he might win MVP. I voted for SGA, but it was very, very close. It was razor thin for me between Jokic and SGA because Jokic was just that spectacular this year. And there's no way the Nuggets are even sniffing the playoffs if it's not for him, his greatness. On the offensive end. But defensively, you're right. He wasn't the same this year, and that's in part because of the load he had to carry offensively. Can he elevate his play to some prior levels as a rim protector, as a guy using his quick hands in the passing lanes? And he still did get a lot of steals this season, but even more so effective. And can the Clippers have enough ball movement to exploit some of the Nuggets' defensive issues as well? That's part of the one question I have for the Clippers in this series. But ultimately, I think for Denver, they just don't have enough defensively. Jamal Murray's health, I feel so little confidence. If he's healthy, maybe my prediction would change. But ultimately, without him looking healthy, I have a hard time picking Denver in this series. I think for the Clippers, I'd pick them to win the series. I don't feel great about Denver, but I am curious about, we're talking like Denver concerns a lot. Do you have a top concern on your mind for the Clippers side of things? Besides Kawhi,
they go through these.
Besides that.
That's the obvious one. And I think that's the one where that I'm kind of skeptical of like actually picking the Clippers in this series just because of that. But to your point about the playmaking and the ball movement, they do stall out offensively a little bit. They lean on their isolation scoring a lot between Harden, between Kawhi, Norm Powell, who can kind of attack tilted defenses, and then Zubac in the post. So like there's not a lot of ball movement there other than James Harden. Can the Nuggets, just by staying home, just by trusting their one-on-one defenders, limit the Clippers offensively, not get out in rotation more often, and then that way they create an advantage for themselves? That's the way I've seen the Clippers go through offensive droughts this season because of that, And I think that's one of the questions that I have for this Clippers team. I'm going to go Nuggets in 6. I think just because of the Kawhi Leonard of it all, the questions about his health. I love Kawhi as a basketball player. Absolutely love him. Watched him dominate for the 2019 Toronto Raptors, and then for the Clippers throughout the last 5 years. Every single time, it's been something in the playoffs. And I hate that it's been the case. I really do hate that it's been the case that we can't rely on Kawhi in the postseason. I hope that's not what happens in this series. I really do. But if you're a betting person, you're kind of betting on the fact that this is what's going to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and say Nuggets in 6. I also think there is something to the fact that Jokic is the best player in the world. And when you have the best player in the world in a playoff series, you just have an advantage. That's just the very simple truth. And with Kawhi, the injuries, I just don't know, man. I don't trust it, Kevin. I don't know.
I know. Maybe I'm just getting hoodwinked by Kawhi looking excellent.
He's been awesome.
He's been unbelievable. He's been
I don't blame you.
Unbelievable. And maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year he stays healthy.
You said April that for and May. 5 years, man. I don't know, man. I can't.
But he load managed. I know he load managed more than ever this year, more than ever. So,
look, if Kawhi stays healthy, sure, I believe in your prediction, Clippers in 6. But I would be dumb. I would be dumb. I can't. I don't know, man. It doesn't work.
I mean, it's partially that with Kawhi, but also Harden is playing unbelievable basketball all year long. Early in the year, no Kawhi Leonard, James Harden. He plays a higher usage than he has in years, carrying that offense, helping them stay afloat while their defense was dominant and helped them win games. Kawhi comes back. He's been pushed more off ball, a little bit more often, picking his spots, playing an efficient style, shooting like 50% from, on floater range. Harden's been awesome. And so I think with the Clippers, they just have so many weapons and an elite defense. I'm taking them in 6 in the series, but I hope it goes 7. I hope this isn't, a down on the wire series. It'd be so great if we get that between, some of the greatest players in the game today, especially with one of the greatest of all time in Jokic.